I began my journey in child welfare in 2014, fresh out of undergrad, and have put my heart and soul into learning child welfare policy for the past 12 months. The State of Maine Child Welfare Policy is defined as the idea that the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Child and Family, join with families and the community to promote long-term safety, well-being, and permanency to children with their families. Child safety is the utmost importance of this policy. The goal is to create a safe home environment for all children with not only support from parents but relatives, friends, and the community itself. Engaging with family with honesty and an open mind is the goal of this policy. The Child Welfare Policy also promotes the idea that parents have the right to raise their own children, and parents are valued in the decision-making for the children, and their voice should be heard. All children deserve a permanent family, and in this policy, it states that if children cannot be placed with their biological parents, then permanency will be attempted to be achieved for every child, whether it be through means of adoption or other sources. The welfare policy outlines the role of the child protective social worker and how this work is done efficiently and effectively to help meet the needs of children and families and ensure they are safe and cared for. This policy attempts to address the ever-growing problem of abuse towards children and disruption to the family unit due to this abuse. The beneficiaries for child welfare policy are not only the children in the state of Maine, but also the parents, caregivers, and families of the children, as well as the surrounding communities. The reform of child welfare policies in Maine started in 2001 after a foster family was murdered by a foster mother who was an employee of the Office of Child and Family Services, also known as OCFS. I am a strong supporter of the reform that already occurred, but also the reform that is a continuous process. Child welfare is so important to our society and the well-being of our future. It is a policy that betters the future and most definitely needs to be kept in place, but also updated regularly. Currently, the state of Maine is attempting to reform many new policies under the General Child Welfare Policy. I am in support of the reforms of this policy. These reforms include the importance of placing children with family members instead of into state care, if safe family members can be found, as well as reducing the number of days that a child does have to be in state custody. These reforms are critical to the well-being of the children, and substantial research has been done on the effects that foster care has on children. The reform of 2001, like stated earlier, has been the most substantial reform in the state of Maine. I spoke with District 5 Assistant Program Administrator Kim Miller, who has had 20 years of experience in child welfare. Miller reported that she was in the heart of the reform and reported that the reform worked because of the systems that were in place to make sure it flowed, starting at legislation and central office of OCFS. Miller reported that the reform was so gradual that caseworkers were not nearly disrupted as much as you would expect. Central office and the commissioner put systems in place to make the reform simplified and focused on one critical aspect of policy at a time to ensure that it implemented in an efficient mannerism and to ensure that the policies were implemented the same statewide. 2 years ago, a new policy came out regarding signs of safety, risk, and danger. Only 2 districts are currently using the signs of safety policy correctly. This is a sign that the reform of that policy was not implemented with the correct tools. All 8 districts in Maine should understand the importance of this policy and why it needed to be implemented, but that was not done. Miller also reported that in 2001, caseworkers were part of writing the policy, which made them more willing to accept it and adhere to it. In order for the state to continue with reforms that are going to be accepted and functional, they must have a vision from the beginning and a strategic plan that is abided by. Miller reported that the reform took place 10 years from start to finish, but now Maine is a leader in child welfare policy. With this being said, the current state of Maine child welfare policy of 2015 is going to take hard work in order to reform. It's also going to take dedication and teamwork in order to ensure that its implementation is successful. In a world that is ever-changing, policies need to adapt to society. These changes are expected to be completed within 5 years, according to the strategic plan presented to caseworkers by the director of OCFS, Jim Martin. Martin is new to the administration and is foreseeing dramatic changes within the policy, which according to him will help children, families, and caseworkers manage incredibly difficult work. Everyone in the state of Maine benefits from the child welfare policy in place, even if it does not feel like it to some. Whether you have children or not, there is always a public agency that is going to look out for the well-being of children, the same children that will grow and turn into citizens of the community in which we all live and work. By creating safe environments for youth while they are children, we are able to promote the growth of functional citizens of society.